welcome. What is up? I'm Chef Tucker, and I'm going to teach you how to make a little pasta dough today. One of my specialties. I come from a big Italian family. I've worked in Italian restaurants before. Pasta making is near and dear to my heart, and I've got all the tips and tricks that you're going to need. So, first things first, we've got our 00 flour. It is the pasta flour. So if you're trying to make pasta, you want to pick the 00 flour. Low gluten content, milled super fine, beautiful. We've also got, really convenient over here, egg yolks, and olive oil. So that's 1 whole egg, 4 egg yolks, and about a teaspoon of olive oil. And that's going to give our dough a really nice kind of sheen to it. It's going to be beautiful. The tools that we're going to need for this part of the class: 1/2 measuring cup, a fork, and this is optional but super handy, a bench scraper. If you don't have a bench scraper, you can use just your chef's knife, no problem. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to remove 1/2 cup of flour out of our bag here. We like to call this bench flour, and so anytime you're making pasta, you want that little bit of flour on the side just to make sure nothing is getting sticky, and you can adjust the wetness of your dough. The rest of the bag can just kind of get dumped right on your countertop here. I like to make pasta dough right on my countertop, that way I have enough space to party here. If you're trying to make it on a cutting board and your cutting board's really small, you might make it a little bit more hard for yourself. So, countertops. Now, this next part might be tricky. So, I have a firm belief that there's an Italian in each and every one of us. As an Italian, I accept this. So, there's a very popular Italian hand gesture. It goes something like this. So, it means a lot of different things. Today we're making pasta with that. So, give me one of these, and then flip it upside down. This is the Italian claw, all right? And then you're going to take your Italian claw, and you're going to make a little well or a volcano out of your flour here. It doesn't have to be giant. Mine's about 6 inches wide. You definitely don't have to bust out any rulers or anything. Just kind of eyeball it here. And then you really want to make sure the walls of this well have structural integrity, because we're about to pour all of our eggy business right in the center here. Now, considering there's so many things in this jar, egg yolks, whole egg, olive oil, go ahead and give it a little shake. Also, if you just pulled this container immediately out of the fridge a few minutes ago, the olive oil might still be a little congealed. So if you see a little bit of chunk in your well, don't worry about it. That'll soften up and go back to liquid consistency. Beautiful. So, this is where the fork comes into play. You can totally just dive in hands first here. That's what my Nonna would have done, right? She would have just gotten in there with her hands. I don't like to be sticky, so I like to use the fork. And we're just going to make a paste out of the flour and the eggs here. So I just kind of slowly incorporate that flour, drawing it into the middle here. Little circles. And we're just going to make this nice little pasty situation here. Now, if this is your first time making pasta dough ever, it might seem a little daunting, but I promise it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, and then every time you make it after that, you'll get better and better. It's definitely a skill, and a great skill to have. If you accidentally pop one of the walls open and your egg starts to fly all over your counter, just kind of try to corral it back together, because we definitely need all this egg for our dough here. So I like to say that the first step of making pasta dough is to make a giant mess. Alright, so if you've got something that looks like a giant mess on your countertop over here, you're doing a great job. Alright. So once you get to the point where you don't have loose egg running all over your countertop, you've gotten into this paste, kind of shaggy situation here, then that's a great point to retire the fork. I'm just going to use my bench scraper here, scrape off any extra dough. All right, then my fork's done for the day. All right, clocking out. Now, taking my bench scraper or my knife here, I'm going to chop the rest of this together here. And every once in a while, I'm going to scrape the countertop as well, just to make sure there's nothing stuck to my countertop, no eggy business or anything like that. And we're gonna just chop this flour and egg together here. And so as I'm doing this, you can kind of see that chunks of dough are starting to form here. It's certainly not some beautiful pasta dough just yet. We're totally getting there. And so now when I look down at my countertop, I have a bunch of chunks of dough that if I mashed all these together, I'd probably have a piece of pasta dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Now, anytime you're gonna get your hands involved, kind of dust your hands with a little flour. That's gonna help prevent stickage here. And so I'm gonna use my knife or bench scraper and just start mashing these together here. And then we're gonna have one lump of very shaggy pasta dough, but pasta dough nonetheless. All right, it's definitely coming together over here. So taking a look at it, it's shaggy. It's not quite to our beautiful pasta just yet. So at this point, I'm looking at my dough. It's feeling pretty wet to me. So I'm gonna dust my hands here. And the next stage of this dough making process is kneading. And kneading is a series of folding and pressing your dough over onto itself many, many times. And my dough is really tacky right now, and that's okay. You can just hit yourself and your table here with a little bit of that bench flour and then knead away. All right, press and fold. Press and fold, quarter turn, press and fold. And so that is kneading pasta dough. And so the kneading process is very important. We're gonna see a number of different changes take place here. So our pasta dough right now is very shaggy and kind of a dull, pale yellow color. In this kneading process, what's gonna happen is we are gonna transform this dough. It is going to be bright yellow. It's gonna have a little bit of a sheen to it from the olive oil that we added in there. All right, so bright, shiny yellow. Those are our first two markers for a beautiful pasta dough. And see, mine's still pretty tacky here, so don't hesitate. You can add a little more flour. On the other hand, if your dough is really stiff and you're not able to do those nice folds, if you run your hands under the faucet and knead your dough with wet hands, that will impart a little bit of moisture to it, so it'll kind of soften up and it won't be so stiff. And every time you make dough, like I said, you'll get a little bit better at judging the consistency of the dough and what you need to get it to the best pasta dough you can make. And so you want to knead your dough for about 5 minutes. When you're kneading by hand, there's not really that much of a concern for over kneading. If you're making dough in a KitchenAid mixer or other kind of machine, that's when you want to worry about over kneading, because it's really easy to turn the mixer on, wander away, and come back to a very over kneaded dough. With hand kneading, you're probably going to get too tired and give up before you've over kneaded. So do it for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll check the consistency of this dough. So after about 5 minutes of kneading or so, this is what your pasta dough should kind of look like. So you can see it's super smooth. It's bright yellow. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it. And then most importantly is going to be, did you activate gluten? And so our 00 flour is a low gluten flour. If you tried to use all-purpose flour for this recipe, all-purpose flour is a very high gluten content, and so you wind up with very chewy pasta. So in this dough, we do want to activate some gluten for structure. So we need to have a gluten activation test. We also call it the poke test. All right, so we're going to come in here and take our beautiful dough that we've just kneaded, and we're going to lightly press it, just super gentle there. And so you see how my fingerprint kind of disappeared and filled in? That's the poke test. So if you have activated gluten in your dough, it makes your dough springy. And so you will see that your fingerprint kind of disappears almost. So that is the probably most important step here. Did you activate that gluten? Now, you don't shove your finger all the way into your dough here, right? That's never going to recover. Now it looks like a donut. So you got to take your pasta dough here. She's beautiful. Lightly just press it. And after a few seconds, that fingerprint sort of disappears. That means you've activated the gluten. Your dough is ready for the resting portion. And so once you pass the poke test and you've got bright, shiny, smooth, yellow dough, you have just completed pasta making. So give yourself a round of applause, all right? It's not easy, but it is worth it every time. So fresh pasta is a beautiful thing, but once you make this dough, if you went and tried to roll this out right now, the dough would spring back together from all that gluten activation, right? So it would just kind of shrink back together. It would be super hard to roll it out by hand. So that's where the resting portion of dough making comes into play. So you're just gonna wrap this in a little plastic wrap and keep it in the fridge or set it off to the side until later. So if you're gonna be using this tomorrow, you can pop it in the fridge. If you're gonna use this later today, for if it's been a few hours until your class, you can leave it on the counter. If it's many hours until class, pop it in the fridge and you can just pull it right out. And so that's how to make pasta dough 101 with Chef Tuck, and I will catch you guys next time. Thanks.